Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're talking about this concept that I see very, very rampant inside of organizations of every single size. It's particularly common in established organizations. So, regardless of budget size, if you've been established for 5, 10, 20, or longer years, this is really common. I'm calling it the familiarity trap. So, we're going to identify what that looks like for your organization and what to do instead. This is on the heels of having worked with so many organizations alongside them in the past many, many years and really seeing this happen again and again. And one of the things that we've been doing across our programs this year, it's the beginning of the year, is Q1 is such a beautiful time for like rest and planning, right? We sprinted, we pushed hard last year, and it's time for a rest. It's time for some reprieve, but also it's time for planning. And one of the things that I see so many people do, and it's systemic, it's not your fault, is I'll rest and then I'm going to frantically jump back up and get right back in it. It's like starting in the middle of the book, right? You're not giving yourself time to like go, okay, what book do I want to read in the first place? So that's why inside my program, the Sprint Method, and inside the Purpose and Profit Club, this is what we're doing. I'm anchoring everybody in. I'm bringing us back. We're doing our Q1 and 2 plan right now because this is that 10,000-foot view. So you can plan for what am I doing? What book do I want to read? Does that get me closer to our goals for this year? Speaking of goals, what are our goals? So if you haven't done that and you're listening to this, you're not too late. You absolutely can do this. We're doing this in February for the Sprint Method. We did it in January for the Purpose and Profit Club. Anytime is the right time to start doing this. So don't give yourself that little lie that it's too late to start. So let's dig in. Why you feel guilty letting go, even though you know you maybe should. Maybe there's something you're doing and you're like, I probably shouldn't be doing that anymore. It's not really working anymore. But there's this like tug, there's this familiarity. And so you keep doing it. Okay. So this might be that mix. You finally seeing the mix of old campaigns, outdated messaging, systems that technically work but don't fit anymore. I'm calling out your donation tool. I am calling out your clunky dinosaur CRM. Any sort of tech that you are avoiding, any sort of tech. Have you ever looked at another nonprofit's page, or maybe you went to make a donation recently and you were like, damn, that was really effortless. That donation was like, it passed Christina's litmus test. She was able to donate from her couch. It was like super slick and easy to use and user friendly. And you're like, should we have that? The answer is yes. And don't tell yourself it probably is really expensive. There are so many tools that are either free or very, very affordable for organizations of every single size. So it might be your system. It might be your tech, right? It technically works, but it doesn't fit you anymore. It doesn't fit your organization anymore. It doesn't fit where you're going. It's not broken. It's mismatched. Okay. So for the first time, maybe you're thinking, we can do better than this. We should do better than this. I want to do better than this. And then this starts kicking in immediately. The guilt, you immediately start to backpedal. You tell yourself, well, it's still healthy. It still works. Gosh, we spent a lot of time on this. That's one of my favorites. Or so-and-so is just like, she's already trained in how to use this tech, or she already knows how to run that campaign. She could run that 5K in her sleep. So like, let's just keep doing it. Familiarity is not a reason to keep doing something. You with me? So I want you to think about, we have a sink in our house that we're getting fixed because it has this like tiny, tiny leak in it, right? So it's like a tiny leak. It technically still works. We don't have to get it fixed, but I want to get it fixed, right? I want to get it fixed because that leak, what's going to happen with that leak? It's just going to get worse. So I have the part, plumber's going to come, they're going to fix it. If I let it go, it's just going to get worse. Then there's water being, coming out, and I'm spending money on water that I'm not using. It's wasteful. There's 1,000 reasons, but it's a little bit of that, like, it's not emergent. It's just a tiny thing. If I shut it off all the way, it's fine. If I turn it on, it's just a little trickle. Don't tell yourself that little trickle doesn't matter, right? It's okay. It still works. We spent so much time on this. The team loves it. That's a big one. The board loves it. Or maybe you think your donors love it, but when you actually like really think about it, it's not your donors that love it. It is like two really vocal donors, two really longtime donors. You cannot build your organization for two very vocal donors' preferences. Is it their organization or is it your organization that you're leading to serve the community, the people, right? What is in best interest for the community, the people you serve, not just two people's preferences, right? There's an organization here in Atlanta, and I've noticed they've had a change in some of their programming, and a lot of their programming is not near me anymore. It's not convenient. I got to get on a bunch of highways. I got to sit in traffic. That's not convenient for me. Is this a bad move for them and their constituents? No. I actually understand what they're doing. It makes a lot of sense. They're trying to choose a more central site for their events. And choosing more of like downtown or metro Atlanta doesn't make sense for their wider constituents. That's okay, right? So if they ask me my opinion, I'd be like, keep doing what you're doing. I don't want you to change. I didn't want you to change at all. I want you to have them down the street from me, right? You cannot build your organization based on one loud vocal person's preference. Or this is another one. It's tradition. You start defending what you saw wasn't working because it's familiar, and letting go feels like betrayal. Okay. I'm thinking about one of our clients. You're going to hear her on the podcast very, very soon. Mary joined the sprint method last year, and she came in and she was definitely in this familiarity cycle. She came in, she knew she needed something different. She knew the way that she was trying to fundraise wasn't working. And at the same time, she kept doing it the same way. It was even interesting to watch her. And we're going to talk about that with her. I'll talk about that with her, of how she had to like stop doing what was familiar in order to start doing something that was unfamiliar. And unfamiliar feels nervous. Unfamiliar feels uncertain. Unfamiliar might even feel risky. But at the same time, being stuck in that cycle of familiarity was doing a couple things. It was keeping her revenue low. It was keeping her donor base stagnant, and it wasn't giving her room to grow. So she was having these fundraisers time in and time out that weren't meeting their goals, right? But she kept pushing. She kept that forward momentum. She kept that action, but not all action is created equal. And for her, making the change did mean upgrading her tech. Making the change meant changing the way she was fundamentally fundraising, the campaigns she was running. It meant making the change in how she was asking, the story with the campaign, how often she was asking, to who she was asking to. She made a lot of changes. And that meant that she had the biggest year she has ever had. She had multi 5-figure fundraiser in December alone. She raised over $50,000. Like, I am so proud of her and the work that she did to make this change, because she's finally hitting her own personal goals, her own dreams for her organization, and it's happening. But first, she had to let go of this binary thinking. So let's dig into what happens next. What happens next is your brain jumps to all or nothing thinking. If we change it, we'll lose everything. We'll lose everyone. Everyone will get mad, right? If we keep it, at least we're safe. At least this is familiar. At least I know what to. But you're not stuck between keep versus destroy. You're stuck between comfort and alignment. The next version, the next evolution of your organization is over here, but there is a leap in between. So I want to share with you kind of this idea of the mirror. The mirror is when somebody with an outside perspective, a strategist, a coach, a trusted peer, shows you what you can't see. Okay, this becomes crucial. Someone who can see what you can't and gently say, I see another way. So this is a personal example. And I think about this conversation all the time because it changed me. It was such a simple 2-minute long conversation, and it changed me. So we were redoing our front yard. We were battling, trying to grow grass forever. And I was always trying to like piecemeal to figure out what our front yard needed, like for some aesthetic, for some curb appeal. And I could never quite do it. Like I would go to, the garden center, and I would find a shrub or some flowers that I liked. And one at a time, or a small group at a time, I would, plant them. Sometimes they would die, sometimes they would take, but it was just like not cohesive. It wasn't like, I could never figure it out. It always felt like the front yard always felt like a math problem I couldn't solve. Because when we bought the house, there was like an azalea here, a shrub there. It just, again, was sort of like, it felt very happenstance, right? And as the shrubs and and flowers grew, it just again kind of felt like it's fine. There was nothing wrong with it. It looked okay, but it just didn't look great. And then I was DIYing it and I could just, again, never resolve the melody. So we had hired a landscape designer years ago to help us with the backyard. And I was like, maybe we should talk to him. Maybe we should bring him for the front yard and just see if he can draw up something that's like in our budget and makes sense. And he blew me away. And so he put together something that, first of all, was totally affordable. So it wasn't like it are all automatically kind of debunked me going, right, of like, oh, this is too much. Everything's fine. And instead he just put something that like worked for our family, worked for, my lack of watering, etc. And it blew me away. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to do this. So I remember when it was time for him to like overhaul the front, he like really redrew the entire front experience. And we don't have a large front yard by any means. And it was really cool to see how he redrew it. Okay. So then he's really great about transplanting. So if he finds, a shrub or something like that, and he's kind of like an artist in that way. He knows what he wants to dig out, and I'll have him kind of over here. And he's like, ooh, we can move that to the back, or we can move that to the side. And he's, replacing things when he can, transplanting things when he can. And at some point, I remember we were in that stage where he had brought in a lot of new plants, and he had kind of some to potentially transplant, etc. He said to me, and I was like hemming and hawing over, they're going to be, I would say they were maybe a foot tall, like small, 12 to, I don't know, 15 inches, something like that, of a couple of plants. And he looked at me and he said, Christina, you're doing all this work for a $25 azalea. Like, I was like, where can we put these 3 azaleas? And look, I tried to grow them. And it was like a couple of other shrubs. He was like, think about how much time, how much labor. We got to go dig a hole and, and he was like, you're saving something over, like, think about the value of it. And it wasn't that he was saying throw away this $25 azalea, but he was like, you're holding on to it so tightly. And it was probably because it was something I had just, bought in the last year, trying to patchwork this together. But it was such a like eye-opening moment, because he was like, you're fighting so hard for something that I can go get at Home Depot in about 5 minutes for $20. I can buy this on sale. Like, let's think big picture. And so it was such a reminder that effort doesn't equal impact, and that starting fresh isn't disrespectful. It's strategic. It was recognizing this azalea you're holding so deeply onto doesn't work with the new scheme. It doesn't even work with your goals. It doesn't go here. It doesn't even have the right sunlight here. He's very like sarcastic in that way. And that's his style. And so it was just such a funny moment where it was like, why are you holding so tightly to this $20 azalea? And I think about that. I think about that in my own business. I think about that for my clients. Like, where are they holding so tightly to something that isn't even what they wanted in the first place and doesn't even work with the strategy? It is so replaceable, right? Think big picture. What makes more sense here? And what's underneath that is this idea of like, if I let go of this campaign, if I let go of this fundraiser, all these grants I'm applying for, it means what? It will be risky. What if we fail? What if I'm wrong? What if I can't explain this to my board? What if we lose the little stability we have? It's better to have a $20 azalea than to have no shrubs at all, right? There's a risk in it. What if none of these new plants take, right? What if it exposes I don't have the right answer? So this familiarity trap actually convinces leaders that familiar equals safe. Familiar equals certainty, even when the familiar thing is quietly underperforming, right? And so what's really being feared here isn't failure. It's like visible failure, because the thing isn't already a rock star fundraiser. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation in the first place. It's not a great tech tool. Otherwise, you wouldn't want to change it. So failing while trying something new feels more personal, more embarrassing, more high stakes than failing slowly and quietly with something old. So the familiarity trap quietly costs you so much. It costs you your confidence. Your confidence shrinks because you're not trusting your own instincts, right? You're second guessing decisions versus I'm thinking about my landscaper coming in going, I got you. This is what you want. This is the dream. I love our front yard now. Love it. It's great. It's energy leaks. So many energy leaks. It's that like burden of thinking about it. It's the enormous effort too of maintaining systems that you don't even believe in or that aren't great. They are not great. They are not great experiences for your donors. Your donors don't enjoy this clunky experience either, right? Or they're not excited. Again, they're not excited about the old school dry chicken dinner gala or the community meetup that has less and less attendees every single time. And then we see this burnout come in, right? Burnout from that misaligned work. Courage gets deferred. So every time you say, like, we'll do it next year, you're reinforcing that habit to yourself, right? Of delay. And that strategy becomes patchwork. So instead of like clear intentional designs, clear intentional fundraisers, clear intentional messaging, bold copy, it's just like this piecemeal, one little thing. This is when people say to me, oh, I've tried XYZ before. I've tried what you're talking about. I've tried a social street team before. I'm like, no, you haven't. All you did was patchwork a social street team on top of a campaign that was already broken. With me, on top of an entire conversion experience that needs to be completely overhauled. Now, I'm using words like overhauled, which may give you overwhelm. Overhaul doesn't mean hard in time. Overhaul can be simple and easy. That's what our clients are doing in the sprint method. We have clients who are part-time founders, part-time. They don't work full-time in their nonprofit, and they are doing this. They are changing their tech tool. They are changing their campaigns. They're raising 10, 20, even $50,000 in their campaigns. They're absolutely doing it inside the Purpose and Profit Club, where our clients and small teams are working together to get their social street team aligned, to layer on more advanced strategies. So it's like, instead of seeing diminishing returns with your direct mail piece or your annual appeal, we need to change what we're doing. We don't get rid of the annual appeal. We get rid of it in the way that is outdated and clunky. Because what gets smaller, slower, and harder over time when you stay in this familiarity trap is momentum gets slower, belief gets smaller, change gets harder, right? The real conversation, the hard conversation gets avoided. Well, this just isn't the best time, right? And that's why I think it's so interesting. I'm thinking about one of our clients in the club who she knew she needed to make some changes. She needed to make some systems changes. And it was not the best time to do that in November and December last year. Of course not. But we had accountability. We had an agreement. She was going to look at that in January of 26, and that's exactly what she's doing. By the time this is out, she will have already made her change. And I'm so proud of her for that, right? Is like having that accountability, having somebody who's like, I see you could be raising so much more with just one change, right? One bold step away from what's familiar. So it takes guts. It takes guts to change. But who better than you, right? You have guts. If you're a founder, if you're a leader, if you're a fundraiser, if you're a marketer, you have guts. You can do this. It takes guts to stop what raises a hard 2K or a hard 20K, but costs you so much time and people power, right? And expenses. It takes guts to change that. It takes guts to change your CRM or your clunky donation tool. It takes guts to be first, but you can do it. You can do it. I did this in my own business. I've done this actually many times, but one of the more gutsy moves that I had to make a while back was saying goodbye to done for you services, goodbye to clients that I loved so that I could make room to serve so many of you. So I could make room for the club. So I could make room for the sprint method. I couldn't be doing that if I was in working alongside organizations doing, done for you fundraising and done for you comms, right? And I remember going, oh my God, am I crazy? I'm turning away thousands of dollars of monthly retainer, recurring revenue in order to make space for this other thing. Of course, it felt like liminal space. It felt like the in-between. I could hear that part going, it's familiar, it's safe, stay with what you've got. But my dream was over here. My dream was to hop on Zoom doing exactly what I'm doing. I'm looking at my bulletin board right now. I can see across all of my programs, all of the names of the people that I get to have just a little part of helping. I get to help so many of you. I get to help make your dreams, your goals for your organization happen faster. And to be alongside so many of you is a gift. And it's so to watch so many of you win, to watch you win, to watch you fail and get back up, to watch you iterate, to watch you honor your creativity, honor your biggest dreams for your organization. Like, it is worth it all day, every day to have taken that leap. And also, Yeah, it was familiar and it was hard. So the familiarity trap isn't just about the fear of failure. It's about that guilt, right? The guilt of outgrowing that something that once served you. That event once served you and it might not anymore. We have another client in the club who really did a good deep dive of like where funding came in last year and what funding was a slog through what tactics and what funding was, I'm using air quotes, easy, at least easier funding, right? And sometimes the ones that were a slog were actually ideas or events or campaigns you liked, right? And so it takes guts to say, we're going to retire this one. We're at least going to table it for this year. So you don't have to overhaul everything. You don't have to panic. You definitely don't need to make yourself feel bad. But the next step to do is to really think about, and I want you to look at both. I want you to look at data. I want you to look at intuition. I think there's both that are really, really important there of like, what's working, what's not, one campaign, one system, one strategy that maybe you've been defending lately, right? But you want to ask yourself, am I keeping this because it still fits or because it's familiar? If I were designing this today from scratch, would I build it this way? Is this what I would do if I was going to start all over, right? What would become possible if I stopped patching and started redesigning? That's leadership, right? Not reacting, not staying safe all the time, not clinging tightly, right? It's realizing that you need an outside perspective. That's why I love coaching so much. I always thought, like, even in the very, very beginning of my very first business, one of my skill sets has always been I can see the forest through the trees. Like, I can see it. I'm like, ooh, do this. It's like, it's so hard to see it for yourself. And I love coaching so much for that because you can bring to me where you're at and where you want to be, and I can help you get there faster, right? That's where the growth happens, right? So someone who can see where you're a little too close, and that's not a failure either. But that's why we coach. That's why, consulting is so important. That's why having an outside voice inside your nonprofit is really, really helpful. So we'll pick it up next time. If you want help to do this for your organization, I highly recommend looking into my programs. That we have the Sprint method, which is really made for emerging organizations to learn how to raise 5 figures or more every time they fundraise. We also have the Purpose and Profit Club, which I like to say is like having a full-time consultant in your back pocket, like year round, right? And so we really layer on advanced systems, whether it's direct mail, digital fundraising, social street team, and you get a lot of support in that process. I will see you in the next one. You've got this.